So now that we've talked about lines, let's talk a little bit about polylines. Let's move up to the ribbon here, select polyline, left click, and there we have it. Now, as you can see, I've already got dynamic input active. We're going to leave this on right now because it's going to be helpful for us just as I demonstrate polylines. Let's start drawing our line right now. So begin anywhere, left click and release, left click, 3, and we can make as many points as we like. And when we're at a point where we're satisfied, we can just hit enter and be finished. Now, when we trace over it, as you can see, the entire line is illuminated, unlike what would happen if we just used the line tool. I'll demonstrate the difference right now. Let's move up to the line tool on the ribbon, left click, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now watch what happens here. If I try to select, just like that, you can see it selects the entire polyline. However, if I tried to select a piece of the line, it only selects that one segment. So as you can see, a polyline produces a single entity made up of multiple lines. Now let's delete those just for now. Select all and delete. Let's talk a little bit about circles. Let's move up to the ribbon here, and as you can see, circle is here next to line and polyline. Left click. Now let's specify a point for our circle. It doesn't matter, anywhere is fine. Left click, and just like that, we can essentially define our circle by inputting a radius of some kind. So for now, let's say 500 units. We'll type 500, and that will produce a circle with a radius of 500 units. Now we're going to look at another way to create a circle. We're going to move up to the ribbon, select the circle command, left click, and we can begin drawing our circle anywhere here. Left click again. Now, instead of using the radius like we just did, we're going to move down to the command line. Down at the command line, I'm going to pick this prompt here that says diameter, which will essentially adjust the command to now allow us to input diameter instead of radius. Left click, and look at that. Now, the lines we're producing, or the dimension we'll be inputting in a second here, will be reflective of what the diameter will be instead of the radius. Let's try 1800, 1800, and hit enter. And now that produces a circle based on diameter. Returning to the ribbon, we can also take a look at the arc tool. Now if we select the arc tool, left click, the default arc tool setting basically allows you to create an arc by first specifying a starting point, specifying a second point, and then specifying an end. Of course, the third point completes the arc. Now, if we move up to the arc tool again, as you can see, when we take a look at the drop-down menu, left click, there's a series of different ways to create an arc. It all really depends on what your workflow might be on your project or on whatever you're working on. Flipping back to the circle tool, you can also see that with the circle, if we look at the drop-down menu here, there's also several different ways to make a circle. Again, it all really just depends on your workflow and what you're trying to accomplish. Let's talk about the rectangle tool for a minute here. Let's move up to the ribbon. As you can see, the rectangle tool is right here. This will produce a rectangular polyline. Let's try it out. So let's left click, move down to anywhere in the workspace. We're going to specify the first corner, left click, and essentially just dragging it in any direction. That will produce the second point. So these are the 2 points, here and here. Now obviously this isn't very precise, and this is where the dynamic input will be really useful to us. Let's try that rectangle one more time. Let's move up to the rectangle tool, left click, and as you can see, dynamic input is already on. Now, as you might recall from the previous lesson, if you hit F12 on your keyboard, which is, for anyone who hasn't found it yet, is just above the backspace and left of the delete key, is just right here. Hitting that takes away the dynamic input, whereas hitting F12 again returns it. Let's start drawing right now. Any point is just fine for a start. Left click. Now, any number that we put in will essentially establish the width, and the second number that we put in will establish the height. Let's try it right here. Let's try typing in 800, 800. Now don't hit enter yet. What we're going to do instead is we're going to hit tab, and look at that. Just like that. Now we've given the rectangle the width command that we want. So now it knows it's supposed to be 800 units. Now it's time for us to put in the height command. Let's try 900. So 900 and hit enter. And just like that, we've produced a rectangle using our dynamic input that is 800 units in width by 900 units of height. So we've previously discussed panning around a drawing, holding the middle scroll wheel down, seeing that little hand appear, and essentially being able to move our workboard around to sort of navigate it. But what if we don't want to navigate? What if we want to maybe move this square so that it's sharing a face with this square? Here's how we do it. We're going to use the Move tool, which is in the Modify panel on the ribbon, and here's how that's done. We're going to move up to the Move tool, left click. Now it's going to ask us what objects we want to move. So that's where we're going to select the object, left click again. Now, because we need to specify how many objects we want to move, we need to indicate that we're in fact done selecting our objects. So let's try hitting enter so that AutoCAD knows we've picked all the objects we want to move, and now we're ready to specify some points. Hit enter. We're going to specify a base point. That really just means wherever we're grabbing it from. So in this case, why don't we grab it from this corner right here? I'm going to left click this corner, left click, and now I can essentially drag it to wherever I want it. Now I want this corner to be sitting right here and sharing a face with this square. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to just bring him over to this corner and left click. And that's the Move tool. To demonstrate how the Move tool can be used to move multiple objects at once, I'm going to show you something else here. Let's move up to the Move tool, and we can left click it. Alternatively, if you want to use one of your command line prompts or the aliases, you can do that as well. Here, I'll escape out of this. I'm going to just type M, and as you can see, Move is the first prompt that pops up on there. So why don't we just hit enter once we've hit M, and now we've engaged the Move command. We're going to select both of these objects now. First, we're going to click this one, and as you can see, we're not done selecting. We still have a chance to pick something else that we want to move to, so we're going to pick this rectangle as well. Let's left click, and now we're finished picking all of the objects we want to move. So now we can hit enter, specify a base point. We can grab it from this side this time. Left click and drag it up so that this corner is here. As soon as we left click, that move sequence is complete, and we've moved two objects instead of just one. The copy command is equally easy to use. Here's how we use it. Let's move up to the ribbon. We find copy on the Modify panel. We're going to left click. We're going to pick the objects that we want to copy. This one looks good. Left click. Now we're going to indicate that we're finished picking all the objects we want to copy, much like with the Move tool. We're going to hit enter. Now it's going to ask us to specify a base point. Now if we want to, and this applies for the Move tool as well, you can pick any point you want to essentially copy from and to. However, in this case, we're going to copy from a specific point because we want to keep things precise. So let's try that again. So copy, left click, select the object we want, left click, hit enter. We're going to specify a base point. We're going to grab it in the middle, left click, and we're going to drag him over to this corner here. Now look at this. It's still letting us copy. We can copy as many times as we want. That's where we're going to bring this over to here, and here, and here. Now it'll keep letting us copy a million times if we want to, but to let AutoCAD know that we're finished the command, we're going to hit enter or escape, whichever you prefer, to let AutoCAD know we're finished with that. Now let's take a look at the Rotate tool. Moving up to the ribbon, we select the rotate tool, left click. Moving into the workspace, we left click the object that we want to rotate. We indicate that we're finished picking all the objects we want to rotate by hitting enter. And now we're going to specify a base point. That's going to be the point about which we're going to be rotating this object. So in this case, we're going to pick this corner here. This one looks good. This will be good for demonstrating how we're going to work the angle piece. Left click. Now, what's going to happen is, as you can see here, it's going to ask us how much we want to rotate in terms of angles. So in this case, if we tell it we want to rotate it 35 degrees, it's going to be 35 degrees with respect to this original base point that we provided for it. So let's try that right now. We're going to try typing 5 for 35 degrees and hitting enter. And just so everybody knows, I'm just going to undo that quickly. Whenever you're stuck in AutoCAD and you're not quite sure what to do next with a command, there's a very simple solution. Pick rotate again. We pick the object again. We hit enter. You can always look to what the command bar is telling you as a next prompt. So in case you're not sure what the next move is, you only have to look down at the command line to see, oh, okay, I need to just specify what the base point is. And that can provide you with the direction that you need. So we then know to left click. And now when we look at the command bar again, we see it's asking us to specify the rotation angle. So AutoCAD knows how to help us move along with a command by suggesting the necessary prompts on what to do next. In this case, we can make it 45 this time and hit enter. Perfect. Now let's say when you're working on a future drawing, you need to take something like this rectangle and rotate it about a very specific line so that this face is congruent with this face. This is where I'm going to show you the reference element of the rotate tool. Now let's say that when we want to use the rotate tool, we want to manually drag it about a face so that this face is congruent with this one. This is where the reference feature of the rotate tool is very useful for assuring that whatever face we grab is congruent with whatever face we want to rotate it to. Here's how it's done. We're going to move up to the rotate tool. We're going to left click. We're going to move down to the object we want to have rotated. Left click again. We're going to indicate that we're finished selecting what we want to rotate. Hit enter. We're going to specify a base point. Left click. Now instead of rotating like this, we want to make sure that we're manually grabbing that face at 2 points so that this specific corner is going to be congruent with this corner. So what we're going to do is we're going to move down to reference, hit enter. We're going to specify the reference angle by both selecting a base point and the second point, or the corner that we want to make sure is congruent with the line that we're dragging it to. So we're going to left click, and now this corner, this exact corner, is for sure going to be congruent with this line. We left click again, we hit enter, and then that's it. Now let's talk for a minute about mirroring lines. We're going to move up to our circle tool, left click. You can draw something anywhere in here that you want to. It doesn't really matter right now. We're going to left click, finish drawing our circle based on radius, left click again. Now we're going to take the line command, left click. I'm going to move here, left click again, and we're going to specify a line just like this. Left click one more time and hit enter to let AutoCAD know that we're finished drawing our line. Now we're going to use the mirror tool. We're going to move up to the ribbon. We're going to select mirror, left click. We're going to select all the objects that we want to mirror around this line here. So we'll pick the rectangle and the circle. We'll hit enter. Now we're going to specify the first point of the mirror line, which is this point, and this point at the tail of the line we just drew. Left click again. Now, if we hit enter, AutoCAD will default to the no when it's asking, does it want us to erase our source object? So for now, we're just going to hit enter. And as you can see, now we've got these two shapes mirrored about this line. Now, you don't necessarily have to have that line there in order to use the mirror command. let me show you. We'll delete these two. We'll go up to the mirror command again. We'll select mirror. It'll ask us to select objects, so we do. We'll hit enter. Now it'll ask us to pick the first point of mirror line, and we can pick any spot randomly that we want to. So let's left click, and because we have our vector snaps on, it'll let us still produce a perfectly vertical line. But if we wanted to, we can really mirror it about any line that we specify. If we want to specify a line that's over here and completely random, we can. But for now, let's stick with a nice vertical line based on our vector snaps. Left click and hit enter, and there we have it. Now seems like a good time to discuss the fillet command, because in your future projects you might be creating filleted radiuses for your various plans, and that's where fillet is really useful. Let's check it out. Let's move up to the ribbon here. So let's move up to the ribbon and select the fillet tool. We will left click. Now when we move down towards our shape, there's something that we want to do first. We're going to move down to the command line, and the radius prompt is what we want to choose next. You can either click it manually, or we can just hit the R key, as R is illuminated there, and it will know that that's the prompt we want. Hit R and hit enter. Now it's going to ask us to specify a fillet radius, and that's essentially just going to be the radius of this filleted corner that we're working with. So let's specify a radius of 20. So we're going to type 20 and hit enter. Now we'll pick this line and this line, and as you can see, as soon as I specify that second line, that corner where the two lines intersect is where this radius will be formed. Let's left click, and now we have a radius of 20 units. Let's try one more fillet. We'll move up to the fillet command, left click. We're going to select radius again by either selecting the prompt or hitting R. And now let's specify a radius of 100 instead. So 100. We're going to hit enter. Now we're going to specify both faces meeting that we want to extract that radius from. So let's left click this line and then this one. And as you can see, that's going to produce a radius fillet of 100 units.